She has trained thousands of solar engineers, reached tens of thousands of young people through climate education, and she's helping to close one of the most critical and often overlooked gaps in the energy transition, and that's people. Gloria, it's fantastic to have you with us. Really fantastic. Thank you so much.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Benita.
Now, I'm really interested. I've been very excited to meet you. So you've built your work around preparing the next generation, from training over, I believe it's 4,000 solar engineers to reaching tens of thousands through climate education. So when you look into the future of the clean energy transition in the global south, what gives you the greatest sense of urgency right now?
Thank you for that question. Happy to be here. So it's really the fact that there is a huge demand for not just training workers, but for competent people. So the biggest urgency now is that there is a lot of solar power to deploy, but less people who are capable and actually skilled to install the solar systems, right? At RETTI, we have trained 4,200 people. Now, the problem that we notice is that without any form of mentorship or support, an actual pipeline that increases opportunities for these trained people, they're just going to be young people with certificates and not the competence that is needed to actually deploy systems to really, really last. So 600 million people in Africa still need electricity access. And so we need to provide more opportunities for these young people, but not just training them for certificates, but training them for competence.
So just to explore that competency aspect for a moment, because that's obviously critical to this working. Talk to me about some of the challenges around that, how you build out that competency, and what are you seeing as the barriers to doing that?
Okay, great. So training is a very interesting concept. Training is very easy to forget. So if you train someone for just a couple of weeks and leave them, there is every chance that they will forget what you have trained them on. So at our school, the Renewable Energy Technology Training Institute, what we do is build an entire 6 months pipeline, 6 months program, right? So after the first 1 month of training, we have programs put in place to support them to grow. And with AI invasion now, it's easy to learn anything in AI. So where we step in is actually to provide hands-on opportunities for the people we train in solar design, installation, repair, maintenance, troubleshooting, to actually practice those things with their hands. Without the hands-on practice, you can hardly achieve any real knowledge transferred, right? And so what we're trying to do as well is to build a real pipeline, an ecosystem of support, peer-to-peer mentorship. These are the ingredients that actually ensures that a person who is trained to become a skilled solar technician can become competent. Without a pipeline of support, mentoring, actual hands-on opportunities to practice those things, they will not be good at it.
So that hands-on experience is absolutely vital in terms of building out that competency.
Yes.
But I guess the question is, can then you build that workforce and that leadership fast enough for the scale ahead and for what's required?
Wow, no. At the moment, we need to train more people. First of all, Africa has 600 million people who are living without access to electricity, right? And there is still a problem of the lack of education on the side of the beneficiaries of solar installations or solar products, right? People think that solar power is like grid electricity, right? And so they use it the way they use grid electricity. That has led to a lot of problems locally with people trying to use the solar power like they would use the grid electricity. That leads to downtimes for the solar system and often failures. And how my story actually begins is that I came across a clinic in Nigeria that had solar panels. I was excited to see solar panels in this community. So I walked into the clinic to find out how come they have solar. The year was 2015, and the technology was still very new in the country. I got the biggest shock of my life when they said, oh, the solar is not working. Wow, so what's going on here? This is a hospital. So she said that it's been installed for like 1 year and it stopped working. Now, solar panels should last for 25 years, right? I began asking questions around this, and I learned that problems relating to skilled workers who can install proper solar system that would last, the lack of education on the side of the beneficiaries, and of course, substandard products that the technicians do not know how to check if this product is good or not. There's a lot of nuances and a lot of crevices where problems can occur. Without the right knowledge, we cannot transition. It will simply fail. So all these gatherings and talk, without the right people who are talented to troubleshoot, to repair, to fix, to recycle, to maintain, to install, to design, we will not be able to transition. So what we have done, I think the question I was trying to answer is, I forgot, I'm sorry. The last question.
Well, I'm interested to hear, to move on from that, to look at the real bottleneck then in scaling clean energy. Is it a people issue? Is it a knowledge issue? What's the real bottleneck?
Oh, I would always say it's a people issue. I often say that people are infrastructure. There's a lot of funding going into scaling huge amounts of renewable energy. Building solar farms, 1 megawatt of solar systems, costing millions of dollars, millions of US dollars. Money is going to solar mini grids, a lot of funding coming for renewable energy, but no one going to developing the people who actually will do the work, right? And so the people part of it is often feeling like, oh, we can do that later. But yet again, without people, without the right people, you can never scale anything, right? So another thing that's a big bottleneck is actually the institutions. And this one came at me in a surprising way. Even if you train the people without the right institutions in the community or in the places where you have built a solar project, it will fail. That's what happened at the clinic. The stakeholders were not involved. They feel like, oh, you accepted money from the white people, so you can do your project, no problems. And so they removed their interest from the project. And so the people interpret that as, this is not important. And if this is not important, it is left. There is no maintenance. And ultimately, these solar projects fail. They are supposed to provide electricity, but they end up not doing that. So the right institutions around the renewable energy projects, alongside the people that you're training, is what makes this, is how we can scale the renewable energy adoption. It goes beyond money. It is not just bringing out funds for this, it's also training the people and building the right institutions around. Carry along the market women, carry along the schools, carry along the religious institutions. And this goes to a lot of the foreigners that come to the local places to do projects. If you speak to only the chief, your project is going to fail. Just give it a couple of years, 2 years, 1 year. Make sure you talk to the people who the project will serve later. Talk to the women inside the churches. They're the real stakeholders. Talk to the school leaders. They're the real stakeholders. A lot of the people who come to do projects take a gift to the chief. So when you take a gift to the chief, you assume that you have now met them and you have carried the stakeholders along. They are not the stakeholders. The people who are your real stakeholders often believe that those leaders are corrupt, and if you like, you can do your project, and we're going to see how that would go. Just give it 1 year. In Nigeria, there are a lot of abandoned projects like this because the people believe that there were corrupt activities that has happened. They were not carried along. It's important to design these programs alongside the people that it will benefit. One quick example to that is that women, example, are the users, and mostly the users of clean energy or clean cooking mechanisms. But the people who bring the projects to the communities often talk with the men because they bring the money. They are the ones that pay for those things for the households. And so they carry along the men. That that often fails terribly later on because the women are the users of it. And trust me, they have a lot of knowledge. They'll just be smiling and looking at you, okay, thank you, no problem, thank you. But they are the decision makers. So make sure you carry along the users, not just the payers of the technology. So that's another bottleneck there.
So
right there.
I want to explore this whole question of local value creation a little bit more, because I know that a lot of your work is not just about training people, but it's also about building those local value chains, about economic ownership and empowerment. And you've recently made that strategic shift, haven't you, towards solar manufacturing research. Yes. And so my question really, Glory, is, how do we ensure that Africa doesn't just deploy clean energy, but actually owns the technology behind it? How do we ensure that that value is staying in the local economy?
Exactly, I was looking forward to that question. Now, I want to make the point that Africa is one of the largest emerging markets for renewable technology, for solar technology. Of course, because 600 million people in the continent still lack access, right? And the government now is doing a lot of work as well to go into solar. There was a recent report that I just read, which states that Africa is actually consuming about 3 times more solar power than what was thought before because of some new data that have come from solar companies. That's a big deal. The reason is this. Africa, Nigeria, and many other countries are, in fact, paying and buying a lot of solar technology. Africa also has 60% more and better sunshine than the rest of the countries in the global south who are also energy deficient. But they are the ones who are just only consuming this solar technology. Of course, we've all heard the statistics here and there. Many people are poor in Africa and all these things. They usually say, of course, why not? It is because they are consumers mostly. And a lot of these other developed economies actually rely on the fact that that Africa is a consumer, because who is going to buy the technology? The move that we're making now with the new program we have just created, Solar Innovators Research Fellowship, is to change that trajectory for Africa. We need to start making what we are using. The reason is because we have the audience who, in fact, needs electricity access. We also have 60% more sun. So the program, without the appropriate pipeline or ecosystem, no solar manufacturing efforts will succeed. What we have started to do with the Solar Innovators Research Fellowship is to begin to build the people, the researchers, who are going to look into what technology works best for our environment. The African climate, with the 60% more sunshine, is such great news. But it also means a couple of other things for solar technology. Which types can do well locally? Now, when we create for Africa, we can be sure of what our people are consuming and what we're using, right? And so that's what our program is doing. Just on Friday, this Friday, 3rd April, we are welcoming our first set of fellows, 25 of them, PhD scholars, master's degree students, and some members of the industry to come and research for 4 months and ask the question, how can we make the solar technology locally? And not just how can we buy pieces from China to assemble? And of course, and I have to answer this question because it's very, very related to what I want to say. Our company created the RETTI solar manufacturing factory. I've been working at this for like 4 years, trying to make sense of the economics. It was so hard, and I was wondering how some local factories in Nigeria, maybe only 2 of them, are able to make a profit. It's impossible to compete with the Chinese panels that come in, right? And after we modeled, I was ready with my numbers and I modeled the technology, I discovered something very painful. Like, it just jumped out at me from the designs. Like, I've been working at this for years. I found out that to produce one solar panel, 590 watts solar panel, would cost me $91, $91.6, okay, to produce one. I looked in the market and I saw that competitors were selling theirs for $76 to $80. I couldn't tell how this was possible. It's because we buy most of the raw materials from abroad.
Okay.
Okay? As a result, there's no way to turn a profit. You're going to literally slave. You're going to have to find an impossible way to get a different supplier that is not China. There's just no way. I realized that in my budget, solar cells, solar technology was consuming 35% of entire costs. Hello, just one item. There are about 36 items. One item was 35% of the cost of that $91. So at that moment, I just dropped it. I knew that something had to change here. We can't keep taking these monies out like this. So you take all that money, you use it to buy all these raw materials. So why are you building a factory? It doesn't make sense anymore. We need to create the product that would help us assemble our own solar panels so that it can be affordable for the poor people that need it. We can't continue like that. And that was why we created the Solar Innovators Research Fellowship. Now, these PhD scholars from all over the world where they are studying are coming to deliberate on this problem for Africa. Now, of course, many of you already know that Africa is kind of like the next big thing. A lot is happening in Africa and a lot is changing now. This is the time to join the bandwagon because what is about to happen will still happen. It will not be delayed. It will still happen. But this is the time for it. And so what our program is doing, I'm so sorry, is preparing the people. Again, I said it earlier, people are infrastructure. The people are the ones that will build the solutions that we need. Thank you.
So, Gloria, we're coming to at the end of our conversation, sadly. But if we were sitting here again in 5 years' time, what would need to have changed for you to say that we are truly on track? Not just in deploying clean energy, but in building a future-ready workforce and leadership for the Global South?
Good question, thank you. First of all, in 5 years' time, I want Africa to start producing their own solar cells, to create the technology that we need to advance away from the dependence on fossil resources, right? We've had a couple of programs to do this. For me personally, my passion in life is actually, I don't go into anything that would not have a positive, tangible outcome. I invest my time, resources, effort, sweat, blood into things that would work, right? So I use this same energy to go into anything. And so I have seen the outcomes from being that way. Why I pointed that out is because looking back at the kinds of programs we have created, I could see that each one was to solve a specific problem. The first one, and I know I have just 2 minutes, the Renewable Energy Technology Training Institute would train some young people for 4 weeks and give them a 6-month mentorship. For the 6 months mentorship, I am no longer making money at that point. I only get the training fee in the first 4 weeks. But that 6 months mentorship is actually what helps them to become job producers. Now they've created their own companies and employing others. And economic growth is happening. I can see that. The second program we did was for Africa as a whole, Africa Fellowship for Young Energy Leaders, really popular in Africa because of it attracted a lot of PhD scholars studying hydropower, onshore wind, solar power, and bioenergy, 4 key renewable energies that can help Africa thrive, right? The engineering, economics, and finance. After that, for 6 months, they then go into companies to practice what they've learned. We're calling it Adopt a Company. Our fellows themselves find the companies. They go through the process of finding the companies, learn how to approach and address companies. We support them with a letter, by the way, to give to the companies. As a result of this, for 4 weeks, they practice what they have learned during the 6 months fellowship in a real These programs are virtual, by the way. They're not physical. And so, like that, we're able to give a physical practice to these people. The third one is the one I talked about, Solar Innovators Research Fellowship, which I just told you guys about. These processes that we put in place is what ensures that there is competency. In any program that you're doing, without competent people, they will fail.
So I'm really mindful of time, but finally, I want something for everybody in this room, because everyone's fascinated by this topic. And so what's one thing that everybody here can either do or support, starting now, to help make that future a reality?
Universities partner with the Solar Innovators Research Fellowship. Give them opportunity to research in your lab. If you have labs in Africa or Morocco or somewhere around, but stop funding consumption only. Start looking at how, even if it's not in Africa, in other places, support people to produce. Without that, there can be no sustainable transition. And it will be very good to talk about it at COP, climate change conferences, and at conferences like this. The problem will linger on, and it will just be there. So in whatever you're doing, support. If you are a solar company here, support, bring us in to train your technicians. Use skilled workers to perform your projects for more durability. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. A huge round of applause for Glory Oguegbu. Thank you so much.